Welcome to the Across the Bar podcast, where we talk about why today's headlines are important for your success at work. My name is Peter Raybar. I'm your first call on legal issues.
And I am Liz Baker-Plosser. I'm your first call on content, health, fitness, and all things well-being.
Liz, you're back. You accepted the big payment to take another co-hosting gig. As
Are you
Laura's
paying me
off
for
on.
this?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you didn't get the check? I'm so sorry.
It's in the mail. I know. I feel like I had a rookie game and I'm being called off the bench again, and I'm excited.
Well, you did a great job. So I've received so much positive feedback on your appearance last week. So it was a no-brainer to ask you to come back this week as Laura is out during the summer. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm floating from all that positive feedback. But no, a lot of my friends and family watched last week's show, and I think they enjoyed seeing a different side of me. So that was very cool. And I'm doing well. I feel like fall is in the air. I feel like I can smell the seasons when they change. And 2 different times in the past week, I smelled fall in the air.
Wow.
That's
a controversial take. You know, a lot of people don't want summer to end, and here you are trying to end summer.
No, I love summer. It is without a doubt my favorite season. But I do like the transitions, and if I had to pick a second favorite season, it would be fall. So I'm okay.
Okay.
How about you? Did you smell fall this week?
A little bit. I mean, the U.S. Open is coming to town, so that's usually the signifier of the end of summer, beginning of fall. But I'm doing okay. I had a interaction this morning. I was on an airplane back from Washington, D.C., sitting next to a member of the cabinet, and I was very proud of myself for not losing my composure in a bad way towards him and just minding my own business. So.
Whoa, you're trying to one-up me with my Air Force Two story from last week, I feel.
Yeah. Well, it definitely wasn't Air Force Two. And he definitely wasn't anywhere on the level of Dr. Jill Biden. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm going to talk about airplanes again with one particular topic we'll get into today, but I'll let listeners and viewers wait for that moment. We're going to talk about quiet vacationing, what is going on with Slack in the workplace, and why managers might want to see all of your Slacks. We are going to get into morning routines and how they can up your productivity in the workplace. We'll talk about AI slop again, because it wouldn't be an Across the Bar episode without AI coming up. There's a huge new fight over kids and social media that's playing out in court. And we are also going to talk about Disney that has a big benefits for its employees shakeup. And there's a morality clause that I cannot stop thinking about, and I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on it because I don't really understand it. That's a lot. We also have, I think, a listener question, plus heroes and zeros. So I'm going to keep an eye on the clock and keep us moving, but let's get into it.
Yeah, let's go. Exciting.
All right. So, there are so many little workplace phrases that media outlets like to use that are popping up in, I guess, just conversation, and then they become like a thing. So the latest is quiet vacationing. What is that, and where did you read it?
Yeah, there was an article in Fortune, which I think really tries to coin all of this workplace lingo. They're like the leader in my view. But, there was a survey done where of 2,000 managers, and 85% of them suspected that their employees were making up excuses to take some extra vacation days during the summer. And that they've mentioned things like pretending that their Wi-Fi is out or that they have, doctor's appointments or whatever just to get extra time out. However, this survey also indicated that 60% of the managers said they're doing the exact same thing to get some extra time off.
Everyone
during
does
the summer. Yeah,
everyone does this.
Yeah.
Quiet vacationing. It's summertime. A lot of offices used to have summer Fridays. I had that when I worked in media. I hope they still do. But if you don't give people summer Fridays, I think they're going to find their own ways to take them.
Yeah. The reality is vacation is very important. Time off is we talked about this last week, and we talked about, and it was my zero, in fact, that the sort of summer slowdown and allowing people to take time off during the summer is really eroding pretty seriously in the US. It's still a very strong thing in Europe and elsewhere throughout the world. But, if you don't allow your employees to take time to relax, recharge, and you're just asking them to work constantly, then they're going to do things like this to find ways to take extra days here and there. I'm not saying I advocate it in any way, like not at all. You should follow your employer's policies always. But if your employer is one that doesn't encourage vacations and doesn't encourage taking time off, then, I think employees are going to take matters into their own hands.
Yeah, I think the Fortune piece mentioned claiming that you had a Wi-Fi outage or you're unavailable because your Wi-Fi is shorting. I have definitely had team members say that.
Really?
When they're, yeah. I mean, I've seen it. It does happen, so that's why it's a legitimate excuse. Haven't you been on like a Zoom call with somebody and I don't know that I've done them from cars and
is that a legitimate? Is that legit anymore? I mean, with like cell service and hotspots, I mean, who cares if your Wi-Fi is down or not? I can't believe someone would accept that as an excuse in 2026.
Okay, well, I am going into confessional mode when I am on an airplane, which I will be later this week. First of all, I love being on planes because I get so much work done. I just like lock in, I get in the zone. I don't watch a movie, I don't read a book. I know. Well, maybe at takeoff and landing. And then I get on my laptop and I get into it. But, I have consulting clients, maybe I shouldn't out myself like this, but they are emailing or Slacking or texting me. And if I have Wi-Fi, then even though I'm on a plane, they expect to hear back from me. So if I just say, I'm going on a plane, I don't know what the Wi-Fi situation will be, then I give myself cover if I want to like really have some like focused, deep work.
Okay. Well, you've raised several issues there that are very personal to me. One is, I think there's two camps of people in this world. There are people who work on planes and people who refuse to work on planes, or will do everything possible not to work on a plane. So you are a person who works on a plane. I am a person.
Love working on planes.
I am a person who does everything humanly possible to not work on a plane, because to me, planes are places that I enjoy because like you actually have some time to yourself, free from like interruptions and tasks and whatever. Like you could read a book, you could watch a movie, you could watch 10 shows, but I understand there are people who like to work and you are one of them.
So you're doing like a self-imposed Wi-Fi outage. I mean, we're kind of in agreement. Like,
well, the thing is,
your time.
I get the Wi-Fi, and I basically, only respond to emergencies, and also a lot of the things I work on are very sensitive. Not to downgrade what you're working on or say it's not sensitive, but I can't always work on that stuff on a plane because no one's supposed to know about it.
Right.
But it also raises an interesting issue that managers should be aware of, and also workers and employees should be aware of, which is like, and I'm always mindful of with clients is like how you communicate with people really initially when you first meet them or work for them really sets expectations for the relationship, right? So like if from right off the bat you're returning emails like within a second or a minute, that's what people are always going to expect from you. Or maybe if you're a manager and that's your expectation, like you want your emails answered immediately, well, then you should say that to the people who work for you. Like one of my ground rules is if I send you an email, I want a response within an hour or within 15 minutes or whatever. I'm generally very clear with clients. Like I'm a one-man shop. I will do my best to get back to you. It's not always going to be the same day. That's just how it is. But it sounds like you have a cadence that people expect, like immediate response.
Okay. Well, two things just came up for me. Number one, you reminded me of a story I read in Fast Company this week that there was some app, Hint, I think it's called. It's like an emotional well-being app, and they polled like 1,000 of their app users about if you were to get a promotion and a salary increase, but your manager said you had to be available after hours, would you take it? And 60% of them said no. That's how much they wanted to protect.
Wow.
Well, they want to protect. I think this is like, the rise in workers caring about work-life balance, which I think began during the pandemic. Yeah, and is important. But no, I was actually chuckling because when I did work in corporate America, I think my editorial teams would dread it when I would go on a work trip because I get so many ideas when I travel. I listen to music, I change the scenery, I'm talking to interesting people, I'm seeing interesting things, and it just like the sparks are going. So I feel pretty bad. And I would start to make a joke about it. Like, okay, I'm going on a trip, like, get ready, you know, and I think they were all taking a deep breath, like, oh my God, she's going to send like 17 emails. And
So that's
I apologize. I apologize to everyone who's ever worked for me. I swear I was a good manager, but that was maybe not a great move.
Yeah. So the moral to the story here is that if you're a worker and you sort of set this pattern of communication with your boss, and then all of a sudden you start deviating from it, especially on, let's say, Fridays and Mondays in the summertime, you're probably going to get sniffed out like pretty quickly. So be careful.
All right.
Follow the
Yes.
rules.
Follow the rules.
Follow the rules.
Speaking of protecting your personal time, which you and I both do in our unique ways on planes, let's talk about mornings, which is something that lights me up. It's been an obsession of mine. I wrote a book called Own Your Morning about how to be the architect of a morning that lights you up and sets you up for a good day. And it was so fun because I was actually tapped by Chief, which is a women's network. It has like 10,000 members, all, you know, executives, thought leaders. So they asked me to write an article about mornings and kind of like, what do my mornings look like and what's the science behind how to build a great morning. So what do your mornings look like? Do you have like rituals and routines that you do every day?
Oh boy, I do. We've talked about it a little on the podcast, you know, but this has been like a big project for me over the past year, was like really creating a successful morning routine for myself, which includes, you know, what time I wake up, when I first look at my phone, you know, what are the things I do right after I wake up, going to the gym in the morning, what supplements I take in the morning, and then what time do I target as a start date for my, you know, calls. Now, I recently shared my target, like start time for calls with, you know, a colleague, and they basically laughed at me and they're like, how do you not take client calls before that time? And I said,
What is the time?
The time. So let me just be clear. This is scheduling. So if it's a scheduled call, I don't schedule calls before 10:30 generally in the morning. And this person looked at me like I was crazy. Doesn't mean I will not take calls. I mean, if there is a matter, I took a call at 6:30 a.m. this week on something. I was on a conference call at 6:30 a.m. unexpectedly, you know, within
Were the
minutes
people
after.
in Europe? Why were you on at
No.
6?
It was an urgent matter, so I jumped in. So you have to be prepared for that to happen sometimes. But to the extent I can control it, you know, I try to, because it's important. Like if I don't start my day the right way, like it's over. I feel like I don't have a chance to recover. So with all that being said, you're the expert. You know, how do you design a morning to guarantee success for your day or put yourself in the best position for success?
Well, I won't get into the whole piece. If anybody's interested, you can check it out on the Chief website. And I just posted something to my Instagram about it too. But I get light in my eyes right away. I go outside and walk my dog. There's awesome science about how that wakes you up and makes you sharper and more alert, and also helps you sleep better that night. I work out in the morning. We talked about this last week with office workouts, but I think it makes me sharper, calmer. My kids know if I didn't get a workout in. But what I get into in the piece is that our mornings need to be constantly audited. Like we go through transitions when the season changes. This is a great time to take a look at your morning. If you start a new job or you go through a big stressor in your life, like those are all moments when you can take a look at your morning and think about what you need. So for me, my morning workout, I used to do it. I would get to the gym at about 5:45 in the morning and do my workout and get to the office. Now I don't have an office, and I've also discovered that my best writing happens at the crack of dawn. So I now work out usually in the mid-morning. And once I got over feeling like a slacker, it's not that I wasn't slacking, but this is what I do to myself. Once I got over that, I was like, this works for me. This works perfectly. So I'm oddly like on the same schedule, and unless it's an emergency, I also don't start my morning meetings till about 10 a.m.
Yeah. For me, it's very important to work out in the morning. I'm usually in the gym by 7:45, 8. And that gives me the energy to to get through the rest. Now, let me ask you a question. A lot of, self-help gurus and leaders and, in the past year, CEOs, when they're asked about their habits, like they're a lot of them say, I wake up super early at 4 or 5 and do all this stuff. Do you think like it's essential to wake up that early to be successful?
I'm so glad you asked that. No.
Good.
And people
right
think
answer.
Because I wrote a book about mornings and I'm obsessed that means I'm trying to get everybody to wake up at 5 a.m. And that is not the case. It's about you have your own rhythms, circadian rhythm, lifestyle. It's about what you do with that first hour after you wake up. So no, I'm not out here trying to get everybody to wake up at the crack of dawn. Now I do, but I'm a weirdo, and I also go to bed really early.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is, you should at least pay attention to the issue and figure out what's right for you. And schedules and routines do help.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of science about different habits and tricks, but mostly it's take a look at your life, do some things that light you up, fill you up, and then you're better prepared for all the fires and twists and turns that you're going to have to put out and navigate for the rest of the day. So I think it's very powerful for people to up their work performance, to take a look at their morning.
Great. I agree.
This leads me to something else that comes up in my life as a consultant and also happened in the workplace, which is Slack, the rise of Slack as a communication tool between team members to keep people organized on projects. So you found a piece in the Wall Street Journal, and there's another interview in the New York Times this week. Like Slack is very much in the media conversation right now. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, there were two different angles. One, which is, companies are enabling their AI tools to scrape all Slack conversations so that they can make sure all the ideas being discussed in the company are incorporated in whatever projects they have, and also for monitoring purposes. There's a lot of, reporting lately on steps companies are taking to monitor moods and behaviors in the workplace. And there's been a lot of talk over the years since COVID about monitoring Slack channels for, initially very charged conversations about COVID and race and politics. But now just generally disputes and other things. And then there's like a separate piece that was in the Times on video about how Slack has just become this like unregulated place where people fight in the workplace all the time. And it was like kind of people are not as intentional as they should be, and things get out of control much quicker than anyone would like them to, and how Slack has just become this major headache for employers, which I can't imagine it isn't for any employer. Like all my interactions with Slack are hell, basically. That's where I'll leave it.
Well, I remember when I left Women's Health, and I had, they talk about phantom limbs when, not to be dark,
yeah.
But would okay, everyone gets it. I felt like I had a phantom Slack limb and was twitching. I didn't know what to do with myself because I wasn't always on Slack responding to messages constantly. So, I mean, it's just the shortest, quickest, most efficient way for teams to keep in touch. We were barely emailing even by the end. And it sounded like in the Wall Street Journal piece that at least some managers and executives think that's a good thing. They want every channel to be visible to everyone. Which is probably a check and balance. Like if everyone can jump into any Slack channel and it's not private, you're less likely to say something offensive, which of course you should never say anywhere.
Never.
But not in the workplace. Never. And all of our Slack messages were always viewable by executives, even if they were private. But when I was reading the piece, I couldn't help but remember what used to happen in team meetings. And I don't think this is unique to any workplace. I think this happens across industries, which was something we called side slacking. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, where you set up like a secret side channel to talk behind everybody's back, basically, right?
But side slacking is what happens during a meeting. So there's like a big group around a table, and person one, their best friend at work is across the conference room, and they're like, I can't believe she just said that, or here we go again, or whatever it is. And when you're in a meeting, you can tell when people are doing it because they're frantically typing and then they're usually like locking eyes, or there's like a chuckle they're trying to stifle. And also it's very distracting. And I don't want people making like editorializing and reacting to my comments in real time. Go talk about your boss behind your back when you're not in the conference room.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, if you're doing it with me, I'm bound to say something really funny that's going to make you laugh and get you busted, no matter who you are. Look, it highlights the dangers of, you know, what you say in the workplace. I mean, one of the things about Slack is, and again, we say, I feel like I say it every episode, you do not have a right to free speech at work unless you work for a government agency, let's say. But everything in Slack, you know, people get lured in by how informal it is and like the fact that you're on it all the time and whatever, but like it's discoverable. A lot of employers are monitoring them with AI. It makes it super easy to do that, and employers are choosing to do that. As reflected in this article, you know, ostensibly for business purposes, but like it could expand beyond that. There's nothing that would restrict them from doing that. You have no expectation of privacy in Slack. It's a company tool. So like if you have something to say that's going to be offensive, don't say it. If you have something that's critical of your boss, I don't think you should say it in Slack. I mean, you shouldn't say it at work at all. I mean, frankly, because someone could report you, someone could overhear it, etc. But so just because it's on Slack doesn't make it any different. You know, if you say something that's inappropriate against the policy, you know, whatever, there's ramifications. And employers are going to know. It's easier than ever to follow it. So same goes for Zoom chats and all that stuff.
So much Slack drama. I'll save it for another week, but I once made a big mistake on Slack. It wasn't saying anything inappropriate, but whew.
I mean, I've had clients,
makes my stomach turn to this day.
I've had clients who were fired because of something they said on a Zoom chat, which got printed out after the call was over. You know, like the Zoom recording feature was on and sent it around to everyone. And there were their comments, you know, right there. So,
oh, don't do it. Don't do it.
Be careful.
Be careful. Okay, so AI is now crawling everybody's Slack messages and creating, you know, recaps of what's happening in channels, or at some companies it is at least. But AI is now also crawling your iMessages.
Yeah,
Is this a thing? I feel like that's
It can.
Okay. Or maybe it's not new.
It's a new integration that's apparently been introduced, and you can enable your AI model to go into your iMessages and sort of, you know, do what you want it to do, like read all the
terrifying.
messages. Yeah, I would not recommend it from a lawyer's perspective. If you're in any sort of legal dispute, you should not do it, because you could be, you know, like eroding an attorney-client privilege or erasing one. I've seen a bunch of posts on LinkedIn this weekend or this week from lawyers freaking out about this, like just urging people not to turn it on, not to use it for that precise reason. And lawyers have rules about, you know, not interacting with clients on text because of they're concerned about, you know, having privileged information in text.
Wow.
And I think this will just lead more lawyers to be like really strict about that and say, I'm not, other than scheduling, I'm not talking to you on text, which whenever I say that to clients, they hate hearing it, but it's a reality.
Wow, no idea. Okay, interesting. Well, on text messages and Slacks, I think a big thing is the emoji response, you know, the reaction that you can give to a message. So I feel compelled to say, and I don't say this often, but I like to remind people every now and then, in case my friends are out there. I am personally totally against the thumbs up emoji. I feel like you're the type of, I hate the thumbs up emoji.
Whoa. This is big news. It should have been in the rundown, I feel like, at the top of the episode.
I love a heart emoji. The perfecto sign is good. Like, show a little personality and emotion. I just think the thumbs up is like, wah, wah. It's like clinical. It's transactional. Everybody who's close to me in my life knows this. Don't thumbs up me.
Wow. So do you mean the thumbs up sticker response, or like just doing a separate thumbs up? Like
either.
The bubble
if you're
pops
reacting,
up.
If you're reacting in a bubble, if you put it in a comment on an Instagram post, no, don't.
Wow.
Anywhere, don't use it.
That's quite a reveal. I must say, I do get kind of annoyed at the stickers if I feel like someone's using them too much. Then I feel.
Do you mean emojis? What's a sticker?
Well, like the bubble that appears. You know, like So like
Oh,
on
yeah, yeah.
iMessage.
That's the
if
emoji. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
The sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get annoyed if I feel like someone's using it too much.
Oh man, then you would hate interacting with me. I am an aggressive emoji user. I'm an aggressive exclamation pointer. You know what?
Okay.
I still had some big jobs despite that
Yeah.
tendency.
Interesting. Well, I mean,
Interesting.
emojis in the workplace. I mean, that's another thing. I actually include that in training programs. Emojis in the workplace could be evidence of sexual harassment, depending on the emoji. So just because something's an
Wow.
emoji does not mean that it is immune from falling under corporate policies. So
Whew.
there you go.
Great point. Did not
Yeah.
expect you to go there. Okay, well, we use emojis on social media. That is just part of those platforms. And something huge happened in social media just today, which is an enormous $18 billion settlement that just came through with Meta. And it was connected to rules and regulations about how children and teens use their platforms. So what happened? You're the legal expert.
Yeah, well, people may be aware there's trials going on around the country against Meta and other social media companies regarding, a variety of different issues that children have been facing because of using these platforms, and what is alleged to be a lack of, a standard of care to prevent, kids from suffering harm on these platforms. And today, on the verge of one of these trials, Meta announced that they've now settled with 48 different states and the federal government to end a trial for $18 billion. There was potentially hundreds of billions of dollars in liability here for them. So 18 billion is a huge number, but a fraction of that that's going to be distributed to the various states involved, to use for programming to help protect kids from the harms of social media. And so you'll see new rules. Meta's now agreed to restrict access to the apps, overnight, and to put in, sort of stops, for 15 minutes of continuous scrolling, and other sort of age restrictions. So there's a number of steps that will be implemented, but this is a massive settlement. There are still some other trials going on distinct issues, but this sort of clears a lot of them off the plate for...
Well, what I also found interesting about this settlement is that it includes that promises from Meta that they will actually be making some structural changes to the apps themselves that affect how teens will be able to interact with them. Like, I think they can't even get on the platform from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. They
Right.
stop getting alerts starting at 10 p.m. There's also some new rules and regulations around the use of filters and seeing how many likes and views are happening on posts, because
Right.
kids were like getting really competitive and feeling awful if, their post didn't do well. So I think all of this stuff is really positive.
Yeah, of course. And this is stuff that should have happened a long time ago. And this is illustrative. I mean, this really applies to the debate about regulating AI right now. These changes should have happened a long time ago. The governments, state governments, federal government should have been active in regulating the use of social media by minors. They didn't. So then the lawsuits happen, and now it's going to be regulated by lawsuit. We can't let the same thing happen to AI, because I think the consequences of that would be far more severe. So that's why it's so important right now. And we're hearing, Bill Gates today wrote a 12-page, thought paper on this that I read and I thought was excellent. Like, we can't let the AI companies go unregulated the way we've let the social media companies go unregulated. The consequences are just too severe.
Great point. I think, as a parent, I have boy-girl twins who are 15 and a little guy who's 11, and they all use, well, George, my youngest, is not on social media yet, but we have like digital time restrictions in our house where the kids can only do a certain number of hours and they have to be off their devices by X time. I tell you what, they find ways around it, or they have in the past. They are very, very good at that. And I've long felt that even when you're an engaged, active parent, like there's only so much you can do. We really need the platforms to step up and care about kids' health and well-being. And
by the way, they can do it. Like
yeah.
you can ask certain AI models to go scrape some YouTube content, and they'll come back to you and say, we can't, we're barred.
Right.
Like these restrictions are the smartest people in the world can figure out ways to restrict access.
100%.
Like it can be done. So.
All right. Well, there's more AI news. There was a Wall Street Journal op-ed that was written recently by Stanley Druckenmiller, who's a billionaire former hedge fund manager, I believe. And
Legendary.
Legendary. Okay, sorry, I'm not a legendary. So
Yeah.
he's a big deal. It's a big deal to get a bylined essay into the Wall Street Journal. And it just came out within the last couple of days that it was written by AI. We were talking about this last week, human text versus AI text.
I think we played a role in this story, frankly, because
We manifested it.
well, it's not just that. I mean, what was the tool we discussed that assigns a score?
Pangram detection tool.
So Stanley Druckenmiller, who's a legendary investor and is also, importantly for this, the mentor of Scott Bessent, who is the Treasury Secretary. And there was some speeches and policy shifts that were announced by Scott Bessent earlier this week, including that the Fed is going to launch this aggressive policy of, trying to control bond rates and whatever interest rates. And Druckenmiller basically came out criticizing him with this op-ed, saying like, you can't do that. You need to let the Fed bonds do what they're going to do, and the yields, you can't control the yields. And someone put the essay into Pangram, and it got a score of 100. And then they went on Twitter and said this thing's 100% written by AI. And when questioned about it, he said, of course, I would use AI to write like I would use a calculator
like, I'm proud
to
of
add. Yeah, he was like, I'm totally fine with that. I'm not a writer. Like, of course I'm going to use AI. And the Wall Street Journal was put in the difficult position of like having to explain their position on this. And they came out with this weird statement that was kind of like, well, it reflected his thoughts. And as long as it's his thoughts and their original thoughts, it's okay. Do you agree with that? I mean,
I was really surprised by their editorial board or spokesperson saying that. The Wall Street Journal, to me, and as a writer and a journalist, I think of it as just sort of like a legendary, iconic media brand with excellent writers and reporting. Doesn't mean I agree with everything they publish. I also think it is in such stark contrast to how the New York Times has messaged about AI. And I say that as somebody who wrote a story for the New York Times that was published earlier this summer. I have another one that's about to be published. They actually, back in June, sent all their freelance writers emails that were very, very firm about their AI policy, which is absolutely no AI tools, period, can be used in your reporting. Not to brainstorm, not to edit, not to transcribe recorded conversations, none of it. So These are like two vastly different reactions or points of view on how AI can be used in journalism.
And the book publishing industry is also wrestling with this issue. I mean, people have had book proposals pulled or book contracts pulled over use of AI.
Yes.
And of course there's a difference between reporting and opinion, but like this was, I think, shocking to everyone in the media world for the Journal to just say. Now, I think to just say it was okay. I think really they didn't want to piss off this guy. It was like, a huge deal in the finance industry. Yeah, I mean, I think that probably played a role in it.
That is just to avoid pissing off this guy who's a huge deal.
Yeah.
They are setting a precedent for all of their content forevermore. So they're putting a lot on that one decision.
And by the way, like I was having this discussion with my son last night because, he made the very good point of like, well, what would have happened before AI? He asked me. And I said, well, he would have either turned to his internal comms person or to his comms consultant and said, write me an op-ed on this topic. Here's what I'd like to say. And they'd have it ready for him in an hour or two. And so what's he doing? Is he saving a couple bucks by using AI? Is he trying to cut someone out of the loop? Is he trying to prove that he's smarter than everyone else? I mean,
little known fact about me, I worked on the brand side in the middle of my journalism adventures. I worked for SoulCycle, overseeing digital content. And the CEO would sometimes call me into her office to ask for help on crafting emails or when she had a speech to give. So obviously she worked on it. And I'm not saying I ghost wrote things. I'm not saying that. But yeah, that's how it used to be done. You get a great writer and somebody who really knows what's inside your brain, and you work on it together. Now it's a bot.
So I don't buy the calculator thing. It's not a good comparison in my view. Not a valid one.
All right.
That really shook you up as an editor.
It did. We could go all day about it. So don't worry. I'm sure down the road it'll come up again. Switching gears entirely, this is a piece that ran this week in Business Insider. I think it was initially reported by Puck that Disney is making a pretty seismic change to employee benefits. They announced that maybe in about 6 months, I think the time frame was, they will no longer offer health insurance to your spouse if that spouse is covered by their own job. That, seems like a huge deal. I personally feel like insurance benefits are like part of your salary. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong at all.
It's like a pay cut if they suddenly take that away from your family.
It certainly could be viewed that way, and it has implications that go beyond pay. And it's, as you say, it's very common for an employer. A lot of employers present like a full, picture of like your compensation, and they include your salary, your bonus, your time off, the value of your health benefits, the value of a 401k match, a pension if there is one. So yes, in one respect, it is a potential pay cut. But also, I thought Disney was a family company, right? And this is pretty anti-family measure that goes really against brand. And okay, Disney, you're saving a few bucks. You're causing a lot more in administrative work for your employees. And also you're having an impact potentially on long-term care situations. So yeah, maybe your spouse has health insurance with their employer, but maybe that health insurance doesn't cover their cancer treatments or doesn't cover their doctor, and now they have to go see a different doctor. The amount of stress this is going to cause for employees over saving a few bucks is really crazy to me. And especially for a company like Disney, that's a family-oriented company. It's really bad PR move.
I have a question about when employees have a job offer or when they're leaving a company, they've been let go. Can you use insurance as part of your negotiation? For example, if your spouse's job, unlike Disney, does cover you, can you say to your employer, hey, I think you should bump up my offer by $10,000 because I'm actually not going to be using the company health insurance benefits?
I've had clients who've tried that. It's not often successful. Where I see it successful is in an exit conversation where the severance package being offered is part compensation, part continued health insurance coverage. Mm-hmm. Then, I've gone back and said, well, my client's not going to use the health insurance. So can you take the $20,000 that you were going to pay for that and just put it into the severance? And most companies would say yes. Some will still say no. Yeah. So that's a good question.
That's a good tip for anyone out there. Hopefully you never are in that position, but good to know.
Yes.
All right. The next story I have a personal connection to because I was at the Women's Health cover shoot where we photographed Hayden Panettiere. And she sadly passed away within the past week. She's an actor. She was in Nashville and Heroes and some other awesome shows. She had a young daughter. There was an outpouring of grief and remembrance. But what's come up in the past few days is a reexamination of a partnership that she had with Neutrogena, which is the skincare brand. And Hayden claims in her memoir, which was published in May, that after she publicly discussed navigating postpartum depression after the birth of her daughter, that Neutrogena tried to pull her contract, saying that it had violated a morality clause. What? How can postpartum depression be part of a morality clause? Is it?
Well, those provisions, which I've dealt with a lot, particularly with people who have public-facing roles or, spokesperson roles or, other public-facing roles. They're very common. And it gives the employer or the brand like pretty broad rights to determine what it is. Like, so anything that could potentially reflect negatively on the brand. Now, I don't know what the negative implication would be for Neutrogena in that situation. I think a lot of people are questioning them, rightfully so, on that point. It would be a different story if she said something like, skincare is BS, you don't need any of these products, then that would be a different story. Or she made some politically charged statements or got involved in a debate that, really threw her in the middle of a spotlight that Neutrogena would rather not be in. But I don't view statements about postpartum depression to be in that category, frankly. But they have the right to say that it is, frankly.
I found it shocking, particularly because I would guess the majority of Neutrogena customers are women, probably women of childbearing age. So it just feels like a just revolting double standard, honestly.
It's a pretty shocking decision. Obviously set her, she talked about how it set her off in a spiral or continued the spiral. And unfortunately, I've said it in the past couple episodes, like I feel like companies are paying less and less attention to how their decisions are impacting employees or consultants or people working for them these days. Like, and this is one of them. Like, they may have just said, like, we don't want to be involved in a period without much examination. So It's very unfortunate. And I think they deserve the criticism they're getting.
Yeah, they have made statements, but I think also with the Lindsay Clancy trial happening right now and all of the attention on that, maybe the silver lining is that it's getting people talking about postpartum depression and support moms need after giving birth, and if it puts more of a spotlight on it and helps doctors and others support those women in their lives, then I think that's a beautiful outcome of a really heartbreaking thing that happened. Yeah. All right. We got to cleanse the palate with some happier things.
Heroes and zeros?
Heroes and zeros time.
So maybe happy, maybe not. I don't know. Who's your zero this week?
Oh, well, it's just very happy. It's not as dark as I could be, though. All right. I actually made a reel about this morning because I felt so fired up about it. So Callaway, which is the golf club brand, partnered with a sort of golf platform called Good, and they have a new driver coming out, a club coming out, and they created an ad where the co-founder of Good sees a woman across the green reaching for his club, and he sprints toward her and shoves her to the ground. Now, apparently this was inspired by a movie scene or something, but if you watch it, have you seen this?
Yeah, I saw it in your reel. It's pretty crazy. I mean, it's like he tackled her. I don't think it was a shove, really. It looked more like a tackle.
I agree. I think tackle is a more accurate word. I'm going to piggyback on that. There was another brand called Tarte, which is a makeup brand, and they launched some contouring stick to, help women get ready. And they created a press package, which is something editors and influencers receive. And so they sent it out to all these influencers, and it contained a pamphlet with women's faces that had dots and arrows on the faces, which is what a plastic surgeon would do to you if you went in and were about to, get a nose job, chin lift, I don't know, neck lift. And then the second image had directions on how to use the snatch stick so that you didn't have to go to a plastic surgeon. I have no words. How are we doing this in 2026? This is a women's brand, totally normalizing plastic surgery. We know you're thinking about plastic surgery. Use our product.
Well, I mean, a lot of people are thinking about plastic surgery. So
it is. It's very much in the ether.
It's out there. You certainly see it in a lot of places, depending where you go. But
well, there was an excellent op-ed in the New York Times recently that I linked to in my Best Case Scenario Substack. I think that was a thoughtful point of view. I didn't agree with all the points the author made, but at least there was context, and she walked you through her decision to get a facelift. This is very different. Nobody asked for this stuff to show up in a box on their front doorstep. To bring it back to the workplace, my opinion as a manager for many years is that this is the reason you need diverse opinions and people from all different perspectives and backgrounds sitting in a room making decisions together. And furthermore, this is why you need to create a safe space as a manager so that people feel comfortable pushing back. Even junior people should feel not just like it's okay, but that they are obligated to say, I don't agree with you. I think this is wrong. This isn't a good idea.
Well said. You sounded very lawyerly there. And
Well, I have
therefore,
strong
in
opinions.
conclusion,
I know. I did. I think you're rubbing off on me saying like matter
well,
this and
yeah,
all your other
well, good job.
all your other lawyery words.
Yeah, my lawyery words.
Okay, what's your zero? What's your zero?
My zero, football season is coming, and there was a big story, on a topic that we used to talk a lot about, but we don't talk a lot about anymore, which is that 1 in 4 NFL players between, who have died between 2016 and 2021 were diagnosed with CTE, which is a horrific brain injury that gets caused by repeated head trauma. And this issue was like very big in our society. The concussion issue, the safety for the players has been addressed in many ways, but it's still one that is very real. And I just feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. And, this article is pretty significant and serious and like,
Wow.
it was talked about for a day and it was gone, and everyone's just back to like, who's going to be on my fantasy team and, when's my first tailgate. But you got to also think about the safety of these players and ask questions like, is that still a priority for the NFL? What steps are being taken, et cetera. And by the way, I'm not saying the NFL doesn't care about these issues. They do. They have taken a lot of steps, but there's more to be done. So that would be my
well, my wish would be for more football fans who love the sport, not just because they think it's fun to watch guys like crash into each other and throw each other to the ground. Is that an impossible
I think
ask?
we should just talk about it. I think we should talk about it, and that's important. Okay, so who's your hero? Is it Dolly Parton or is it someone else or something?
Oh, I'm so predictable. I mean, I had to. It is Dolly Parton's.
Yeah, it has to be our
beautiful-
joint hero.
Is it yours too?
Yeah, of course. I
Okay,
mean,
good.
even the president acknowledged her death. Jeez.
Well, I
How
wish
could it
that
not
hadn't
be?
happened. Even the president, yeah.
Well, he said
Yeah.
this morning, I don't know if you heard, he went on his Fox TV and said, she really liked me.
Of course, he made Dolly Parton's
Sure.
passing about him.
Yeah.
No, she lived a big, beautiful life. She was uniquely and boldly herself. I've been seeing all these tributes on social media. Last night, I don't know if you saw this, but her security guard did this tribute on YouTube. First of all, he did an excellent job. And it was just very touching to get to have a glimpse kind of behind the scenes and what a kind, compassionate, cool woman she was, even when she wasn't in front of the cameras. But I was actually going to share a quote, which is making the rounds. Many of her quotes are, but it was something like, don't get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life, which I thought was beautiful and something I need to remind myself. And probably if you watch Across the Bar, you do too.
Yeah, and also let's not forget our connection to the workplace, 9 to 5. Great movie, great song. And I was reading, one thing that's been making the rounds, there's the great note that she sent to Eminem. And there's also this story about how she allegedly wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the same day, which may or may not be true, but at least wrote them in very close proximity to each other, which is pretty cool. But yeah, a tribute to her. Like, she's fantastic. She was an important part of our culture, our society, obviously a great, decent person who did a lot for literacy and other causes and fun and joy. So she will be missed.
Universally beloved, a rare thing in
rare.
our fractured world. Have you and Laura ever had the same hero or zero, or is this the first? Oh, you
we have,
okay.
but this one, I think, it's the right thing to do today, the day after we learned learned of her passing. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, that's another great episode, Liz. Good job. You're crushing it. You're crushing it. I won't send you a thumbs up emoji. Maybe
no thumbs up emojis.
Maybe a flex bicep. Maybe
flexes.
that one.
I take gold stars. I take
Right.
all of it, and I know Laura is enjoying the end of her summer, but I'll say it again. I'm here if you all ever need me to.
Great.
Step up.
Well, thank you very much for joining. And thank you, everyone, for listening and watching the Across the Bar podcast. Thank you, Sadie, for producing. And we'll see you all next week. Thanks.